Before OWI had its estrangement with Just Add Water, the timeline of Oddworld games looked quite different. Even as late as 2014, the message was loud and clear. The next game is going to be an Exodus remake with a similar scope and budget as New and Tasty, and afterwards, Oddworld is going to create something big and new from the remake's combined profits. It was heavily implied that this something was in fact Squeak's Odyssey, the third installment of the original quintology, which has been teased since before Abe's Odyssey was even released. This is Namin, and in this video we are taking a look at Oddworld's mysterious third hero. We have no idea. Well, that was easy. Let's move on. I'm joking, of course, but not by a large margin. Details surrounding the character are quite vague, especially considering, similarly to my two previous topics, Slickstorm and the Hand of Odd, this character too received its own share of legends and accidental misinformation. So, let's go back right to the source, to Lorne Lanning himself, who said the following back in 2014. You once named Squeak's Odyssey as the third entry. What was your concept, at least at the time? Squeak's kind of a spoiler, but I will tell you this. The idea was that the Vikers, who were animal researchers that would kill a million bunnies just to make a better fabric softener, had been making robotic life support devices because so they could repossess people's body parts like how you would get evicted. They would stick what's left of you in this clunky robotic form and toss you out on the street. That's who Squeak was, but who he really was would come out in the story. Quite vague, I know, but there isn't much to go on. There is one image circulating on the internet created by Silvio Abisher that you can see on the screen right now, which supposedly depicts Squeak in his mechanized body. However, unlike what common rumors say, the image was never confirmed to be Squeak, nor to be his canon appearance if it does depict him. Still, the picture is a great mood setter, and it is more or less how I imagined the creature to look too. So, other than being the third protagonist of the series, what is so special about this guy? Well, believe it or not, you should believe me because I'm citing my sources. Sherry McKenna, co-founder of OWI, reminisces about the character like this. When Lorne told me the story, it took a whole day. The character I fell in love with was Quake. When he told me we were going to play the first game as Abe, I said, "Oh no, not Abe. I do not care about him." Now, I love Abe, dear God, although Squeak still remains my favorite, and the game isn't even done yet. So yeah, based on this little story, we can more or less thank Squeak for the series' existence. Lon Lanning doubles down on this story in a Q&A with the following. The story of you telling the story of Oddworld to Sherry a few years ago is almost legendary now. How much of Oddward's story did you tell her that day? I mostly told her about Squeak's Odyssey, third in the quintology, and moved a lot around the character and dilemmas of Squeak. She loved Squeak so much that she didn't believe me we would be able to make Abe as likable. Now she loves Abe more. She also felt that there was no way she would like Munch as much as she likes Abe, but now she loves Munch just as much. The game would have also shown us a deeper look into the world as evidenced by this quote. If we compare Oddworld to our world, we have only seen Paraguay. It all starts in this little factory where Abe works, but it's a small part of the Oddworld. We are going to get closer to the very heart of civilization, the society that consumes these products. For the last game, there will be people everywhere. It will be some sort of Hong Kong with people working, moving, everywhere and all of the time. That's why the first game was set in a small place of Oddworld, because I wanted to be able to show all this world and all this activity in the last game. Squeak's Odyssey is by analogy set at the harbor where products arrive, the beginning of civilization, and it will continue afterwards. As it might be obvious by now, Squeak and his game were kind of a big deal. But before I discuss what happened to them, there is something I simply can't leave without mention. The events I'm going to talk about now is one of the major reasons why I dedicated two different posts on my site to clearing up myths about the unreleased games. It is a very common myth in the fandom that in one of the comment sections of Dear Alf, he reveals just what species Squeak is. If you were to ask a fan that still believes this, you would probably be told that Squeak is in fact a brain slurge. The R isn't a typo, The normal slurches are those little slugs you occasionally step on in Exodus, which usually wakes up something way nastier. How exciting, right? Finally, we hear something concrete about the character. Well, it's all wrong. In truth, the conversation that started this whole mess went down like this. Hey Alf, I was curious. On some sites they said that Squeak uses symbiosis. I was wondering, what type of symbiosis that is? Does he possess people like Octiguy? Or does he do it with the help of other creatures like mentioned his fuzzles? Squeak's Odyssey will use a special controller called a Brain Slurge. You insert the Brain Slurge in your ear and it takes over control of your body. It's immersive. When you say Brain Slurge, is that a subspecies of Slurge, the slug creatures in Abe's Exodus? I'm sure Brain Slurge are a thing. I've seen them in all the sci-fi trailers. Two things to note. Not only is Alf extremely facetious through the whole conversation, he also doesn't even say that brain slurges are Squeak's species, rather that it is something that you will jam into your own ear. The joke was lost on poor Sockbot, who promptly decided to share his great finding on the Oddworld wiki.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
The mods were quickly convinced about the legitimacy of the news, and this unfortunate joke was almost permanently etched into the fandom's collective consciousness. To Sogbot's defense, he also didn't claim that Squeak himself was a brain slurge. That's an entirely different, even more warped version of the myth, which completely deviated from the original conversation. The wiki page itself remained relatively unedited for nearly a decade, until yours truly finally decided to set things straight and stop this source of misinformation. Alf being the prankster as usual didn't clear up the myth directly, however, he did make fun of people who took his joke as gospel in the following reply to a question that asked about the appearance of brain slurs. They are about 8 foot across, roughly ocean-shaped with flaps of casual menus. Their skin is surrounded by a ceramic second skin, which has puddles of silk in it. They move by spinning their nostrils, but don't let one get near your ear, or it will crawl in. Despite all this, the myth endures to this day. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if for a few viewers this is a completely new revelation. But hey, you're welcome. One might reasonably expect that after OWI and Justed Water separated, Squeak too went down the drain, and to some extent this is true. As Lanning has explained several times, the new quintology is about Abe, not the proposed heroes, which means Squeak is basically retconned. However, to throw a monkey wrench into this otherwise clear-cut situation, in a Q&A back in 2019, Lanning told the following: "Can't tell more about Squeak, he is top secret. Whether this means that he has plans with the character in the future, or that he just wants to keep all his plans close to his chest, I don't know, and I don't think anyone else does other than Lanning himself either. All I can say is that it is a bit disheartening to know that the story that kickstarted the series was more or less demoted to the lofty status of maybe not entirely cancelled.